Alright my fellow agents, welcome back to the Gaming Brigade, and as we roll into next week my friends, I'm going to continue the series at the channel where I revisit a few of my favorite builds that I'm currently using in the game, and today I'm going to be breaking down a blue screen build as well as a skill build. Now one thing I'd like to mention before we jump into the build breakdowns is that there are no global modifiers active whatsoever, and the reason for that is I want to make sure whenever you may see this video you know exactly what the build can do without any events going on. That's all for the intro, my friends. As always, I want to thank you so much for your incredible support, and with that being said, let's jump right to the footage. Now, as far as the specialization is concerned, for this version of the build I'm using Gunner. I'm doing that to get that extra armor on kill, reload speed increase, rate of fire increase. You're also going to get some extra weapon handling when you are still for 1 second. And always remember, regardless of the specialization you choose, have the proper weapons activated in your weapon skill tree. That way you're getting a 15% weapon damage bonus regardless of which one you're using. And the reason I mention that in every build video I post is because I hear from so many players out there who forget to do that, and then you're leaving weapon damage on the table, and that just sucks, you know? You've heard me say that in so many videos. Please make sure you activate the right weapons. Now, as far as my primary is concerned, needless to say, it is the blue screen. And for those of you out there who may not have this weapon, it is in the general loot pool. I recommend hitting up countdown, set your targeted loot to LMG. Wish you nothing but the best of luck. Now, the reason this is so effective is because of its talent, Disruptor Rounds. And with that talent, shooting an enemy marks that enemy and adds a stack to the agent up to a count of 50. Shooting a marked enemy refreshes the mark and adds stacks to the agent. When you deploy a non-shield skill, remove all stacks on agent and all marked targets trigger an effect. You can see the breakdown are as follows. You know, the different stacks are going to trigger different effects. And you can also see at the very bottom, this effect will trigger immediately if any marked enemy is killed. So there is a bit of a learning curve with this weapon, but I'm telling you my friends, once you get it down, it is absolutely lights out, and even as you're learning, you will definitely notice how effective this weapon is when it comes to crowd control. Whether you're playing solo or in a group, you're just going to be ripping through enemies left and right. The weapon is so much damn fun to use. Now moving on to the gear itself, you can see we're running 4 Negotiators, 1 Petrov, and the Coyote's Mask, which is what we're starting with. Now, as you've heard me mention in previous videos, this is a must-have exotic for every player out there. The reason for that is because of its talent pack instincts. And with that talent, you and all your allies are going to get a crit hit chance and or crit hit damage bonus based on the distance of the last enemy you hit. You can see the breakdown is as follows. So when you're running in a group and 3 people have this mask, all 3 can be running at the same time. It is absolutely insane, my fellow agents. Now moving on to the body armor, it's the 1 piece of Petrov. We're running that so we get that extra 10% LMG damage bonus. And one thing I'd like to point out really quick is you'll notice that top attribute headshot damage. I don't really need that for this build. I would much rather that be crit hit chance, but this is the best one I have, so I'm using it in the meantime until I get the version I'm looking for. As far as the talent is concerned, I'm using Obliterate, where critical hits are going to increase total weapon damage by 1% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 20 times. Next, my friends, we have the holster, the knee pads, the gloves, and the backpack. Those are the 4 pieces of the Negotiator's gear set. We're running 4 so we get all of the gear set bonuses. 2 pieces 15% crit hit chance, 3 pieces 20% crit hit damage, 4 pieces hostile negotiations. Critical hits mark enemies for 20 seconds, up to 3 marks total. When you critically hit a marked enemy, all other marked enemies take 60% of the damage dealt. Not only that, whenever a marked enemy dies, you're going to gain 2% crit hit damage, stacking up to 20 times or until the combat ends. Next, we have the knee pads, gloves, and backpack. Those are the 3 remaining pieces of Negotiators. And one thing you'll notice is on every single piece of gear, I'm trying to stack crit hit chance and crit hit damage everywhere I can. Last but not least, when it comes to the backpack, because we are wearing the Negotiator bag, we do have access to the talent critical measures. This is one of the best talents when it comes to a gear set backpack, because with that talent, it's going to increase hostile negotiations damage to additional marked enemies from 60% to 112%. And obviously that is a huge difference in regard to the amount of damage you're going to be putting out. Now, as far as my skills are concerned, I'm using the combination of the Booster Hive as well as the Fixer Drone. That's what I'm using for this version of the build. And when we look at the numbers, you can see I'm sitting at 49% crit hit chance and 135.1 crit hit damage. I'd also like to mention, those numbers are going to be dependent on not only the gear you have equipped, but having a Shade Watch of level 1000. Hope this helped you out, my friends, and as always, questions, comments, or feedback, please let me know and I will do my best to get back to you as quick as I can.
Medical assistance needed. Hostile supply convoy. Detected.
Damn it! This is some heavy fire.
Heavily armored hostile detected.
Now, as always, we're going to jump right into the details, and if you happen to enjoy this, do me a favor and hit that like button. It truly helps the channel out. And if you want to stay up to speed on all things Division, feel free to hit that subscribe or join button as well. Now, starting with the specialization, we're using Technician. We're doing that for a few main reasons. First of all, it does give you an extra skill tier, which means I do have the option of changing one of the core attributes on another piece of gear to weapon damage or armor. You also get an extra 12% damage bonus to drone, skill proxies, and robotics, which you will run into all the time on legendary content. You have access to the Talent Overclock CPU that will give you an extra 10% skill damage bonus as well. And always remember, regardless of the specialization you may choose, always make sure to have the proper weapons activated in your weapon skill tree. That way you're getting a 15% weapon damage bonus regardless of which one you're using. But in my opinion, you definitely want to use this specialization. Now, making our way to the build itself, you can see for my primary weapon, I'm using the Harmony Rifle. Now, this happens to be my go-to weapon with a skill build, and the reason for that is because it has the talent perfectly in sync. Hitting an enemy grants 20% skill damage for 5 seconds. Using a non-shield skill or damaging an enemy with a skill grants 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds as well. And not only that, damage increases are doubled while both buffs are active at the same time. Now, this happens to be a PvP exclusive. You can also get it from named caches. And for those of you out there who may not have this, in the meantime, I recommend using your favorite rifle with the regular talent in sync. I can promise you that will still get the job done. Now moving on to the secondary, it's the Capacitor. This is easily one of the best exotics in the game, especially for a skill build. This happens to be in the general loot pool. I recommend hitting up Countdown, set your targeted loot to Assault Rifle. Wish you nothing but the best of luck. You can see it has the talent Capacitance. And once again, and this is for those of you out there who may not have the Capacitor, I recommend using the Test Subject because that Assault Rifle also has the talent perfectly in sync. That is in the general loot pool. That's much easier to farm for, and I will go over a few farming details at the end of the video. Now, the one thing I'd like to mention in regard to my sidearm is you can see I'm using the TDI card custom and this has a skill tier. But for the record, the skill tier is only active when you are actually holding that weapon, so please take that into account when you're putting your build together. Now moving on to the gear itself, you can see I'm running 3 Empress International, 1 Murakami, the Waveform holster, and 1 piece of Wyvern, which is what we're starting with. That is going to give us an extra 8% skill damage bonus. Now moving on to the body armor, it's the first of 3 pieces of Empress. We're running those so we get all of the brand set bonuses, and as you can see, that's 10% skill health, 10% skill damage, and 8% skill efficiency. And I'm running with a Talent Glass Cannon. All damage you deal is amplified by 25%, however all damage you take is amplified by 50%. Now I know a lot of players out there do not like this talent, so if you want to use the Talent Kinetic Momentum, it's another great one for skill builds. I recommend using that. Next, my fellow agents, we have the holster. You can see it is the exotic holster, the Waveform, and the reason this is so effective is because of its talent alternating current. Generate a stack of 3% skill damage on one of your skills every second, capping at 10 stacks. After 10 seconds at the cap, the stacks transfer to the other skill. The process then repeats non-stop. One of the best exotics in the game. It is in the general loot pool. Recommend hitting up Countdown, set your targeted loot to holsters. Next, we have the knee pads. It's the 1 piece of Murakami, and these happen to be the named knee pads Emperor's Guard, and the reason they're so effective is because of that middle attribute 1% armor regen. I like having that because this build is a little bit squishy. If you do not have these, again, they are a PvP exclusive. You can also get them from named caches. Feel free to use a regular piece of Murakami in its place. Last but not least, my friends, we have the gloves and the backpack. They are the final 2 pieces of the Empress International. 2 things to mention really quick. First of all, you will notice that on every single piece of gear, I'm stacking a combination of skill damage and either skill haste and or skill duration everywhere I can. When it comes to the talent on the bag, I'm using the talent tech support. And as you can see with that talent, skill kills are going to increase total skill damage by 25% for 25 seconds. That is an absolute lifetime in this game. You're going to be shredding everything left and right. As far as my skills are concerned, you can see I'm using one of my favorite combinations in the game, and that is the assault drone and the assault turret, but if you want to use something else, you totally can. I also like to mention that when it comes to this build, I am not turning on any global modifiers, and the reason for that is I want you to know, regardless of when you may see this is how the build is going to perform without any special events going on. Hope this helped you out, my friends, and as always, questions, comments, or feedback, please let me know, and I will do my best to get back to you as quick as I can.
Heavily armored hostile detected. Detecting additional hostile contacts. Target approaching. Backup request denied.